Super Bowl week is right upon us as all the teams, as the Chiefs and Eagles, are in New Orleans. But more importantly, the Senior Bowl has come to an end. We're starting to see now who the stars that are emerging. Even East West Shrine Bowl. I know it's not. I don't want to say if it's as big, but it doesn't get the showcase. I feel like the Senior Bowl does because, the Senior Bowl is like this huge thing. Even though one's played in AT&T Stadium, one's in Mobile. But anyway, guys, first time Patriots and co-host, a very good friend of the show, Pat Lane, Matt St. Jean, is here with me to talk a whole lot of football. Why? Because this is the first Sunday without true football in 6.5 months.
What, are we not counting the Pro Bowl now?
No, you know what I mean. Like, there's no,
no, that's not real football.
no. Like, I saw a Denver Broncos account because Drake May threw a weird check down pick, and Byron Murphy took it back to the house, and Bronco fans are going, "Don't ever put him in Bo Nix combos again." And everyone's like, "They're playing flag football on a Sunday. Like, who really cares?"
Yeah, I've seen 2 clips from the Pro Bowl. Both of them were Drake May touchdowns. Outside of that,
I know. I watched I tuned in for a little bit, and then they were doing the punting thing, and I was like, "Why am I watching this?" Like, I do this every year, where I'm like, it's like the NBA's a Saturday night where I'm like, which look, NBA's obviously taking the headlines the last 24 hours, but I'll watch it or I'll tune in. And it's like, oh, no, this year's to be different. This year's gonna be great, and then you start watching it, and you're like, what the hell am I doing with my time?
Yeah, I came to the rules. I feel like the Pro Bowl is really just a vacation for players masquerading as an event, and as long as they have fun with it, I'll tune in for highlights.
Exactly, and to see hey, when obviously Schooler didn't end up going because of injury, Drake May fills in as an alternate, so you have some excitement there, but at the same time too, yeah, it's a way. Hey, let's go to Orlando for a few days of the week. If you're a player with a family, hey, take the kids with you, go to Disney, go to Universal, do whatever. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't even want to say place filler, but I also don't like everyone where it's like, oh, the Pro Bowl used to mean something, where you see Brady and Breeze chucking in, or even the Jeff Saturday clip that makes the rounds. Look, obviously that, but I'd almost rather what they do now than guys going and half-assing it in pads,
Well, and I like the skills challenge. I think that's the most fun part of it anyway. So I didn't tune in for a second of the actual Pro Bowl today for the skills challenge. I tuned in for the part when Drake May was going to be on because I was curious to see how he'd stack up against the guys. We don't have to talk about that performance, but
no, we don't. But look, we can talk about Drake all we want. We can talk about the team all we want. I've said this on the show numerous times. No matter who the Patriots person is, so I sound like a broken record, guys. I've had you all know who's been on here, but with Matt, it's different because Matt and I, this is the first time we've ever talked in person. First ever time we've done a podcast together. So with this team this year, I have this whole why not us mentality, and I'm not trying to go on this whole, oh, they can do what the Broncos did, they can do what the Commanders just did, but essentially it's, hey, there's only one way to go but up. So anything you can do really just not impresses me, but it's adding up to building a successful culture in New England.
yeah, no, and I think the why not us is important because while going from last to first is really not even the goal, the expectation, whatever you want to say for next season for New England. Weird things happen in football, and if you can, the Patriots can go from being a bad team to a mediocre team in one off season. And if you're a mediocre team, a couple of balls bounce the right way, you don't know where you're going to end up. And if somehow that gets you into a playoff spot again, you never know what's the odds for the team are very low. The roster is depleted, needs a lot of help, but you never know which moves are going to be the ones that get you over the top. Everybody's got a first round pick every year, but not all of them turn into those guys who turn you into a Super Bowl contender. And if that's what the Patriots get, and they get one of those guys in the second round, and all of a sudden we're having a very different conversation about the team in 9 months.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because even this time next year, where it's if they're in that boat of where Arizona currently is sitting, I think most fans will take that. Where it's, hey, I know Arizona did fall off towards the end of the season, but I'd even prefer what Detroit did 2 years ago, where they got off to that rough start. I always reference Detroit in 22 because that's the one and only time that I've been to Gillette Stadium for a game. Got to tailgate with your co-host and his family. That was a fun experience. That's Pat, by the way, guys. And
Yes.
That year too, Detroit, it was what are they doing? They were 2-6, and then they start stringing wins. They just keep looking good. And then the last game of the season, they knock Green Bay out when they had nothing to play for. I'm not saying the team's going to go 9-8, but if they finish, say if they, which I still feel like this will happen, if they're 2-3, 2-4 by like week 6, week 5, 6, like, around middle of October, like see at championship series time, World Series time. I feel like people will be okay because considering last year, look, they got their second win against the Jets late October. So if it's like middle of October and it's like, hey, 2-4 becomes 3-4, which then it's like, hey, you go on a little bit of a run. One other thing too is the fact that this year they have a much easier schedule to deal with. Last year,
Yeah.
look, your fourth place games were, hey, you're playing the Bengals, the Chargers, and the Bears. Now I know two of those teams it didn't work out and they missed the playoffs completely, but all three were, hey, these teams can make the playoffs, and two of those teams it was, hey, they could potentially be the teams that are we're on those planes today to New Orleans. I personally going into the year thought Cincinnati was going to be the team to go. That just felt like, an all-in year for them. But you know what, week 1, we showed them otherwise. But with the Patriots, though, this year it's, hey, the difference between third and fourth place is now, hey, you're playing the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, and the Las Vegas Raiders on top of playing the NFC South and the AFC North, which I'm not here to slouch on that division, but for 3 of the 4 teams, we really don't know what they're going to be next year. Like we can figure Baltimore, hey, they're probably going to be good again, probably the favorites to win.
They got
Pittsburgh,
Lamar.
they got Lamar. Pittsburgh will be that same thing. They chill around. They're kind of that purgatory where it's like they're not going to strip it down to the studs and be bad, but they're not going to be good enough to – they'll sell their fans on the Super Bowl. It's like that Dallas Cowboy standard now where it's like, hey, we can win and trick our fans into thinking that we're going to go far, but we'll ultimately, best case scenarios, they make to the divisional round, kind of like what Houston did this year. And then Cincinnati, we don't know what's going to happen. Their new faces are going to be gone. And then Cleveland, well, they just won 3 games this year, so we don't really know if they're going to bounce back or be better, or hell, who's playing quarterback for them. And then the NFC South kind of explains itself as a whole with the teams there. So you really have the opportunity where you have to take advantage of those, because for the 3 teams I mentioned prior, the Giants, the Raiders, and the Titans, I don't see much from all those teams, even though the Raiders, I thought, we're going with Darrell Bevell as OC, but it comes up today that Chip Kelly's the new offensive coordinator for them.
Very interesting. I'm very curious to see this combination of coaches in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what it means for their quarterback position, because honestly, they brought in Pete Carroll, and my first thought was, okay, this is somebody who would be able to deal with the stuff that comes with Shedeur Sanders. This
Yeah.
is someone who's experienced with especially college athletes, and okay, this feels like a Shedeur fit if they want to make a move up. And then it's what do you call it, Chip Kelly in there, and it's like, okay, well, are they going to maybe try to get Will Howard instead on day 2, day 3, the Ohio State quarterback, who Chip Kelly's familiar with, and use their first round pick on something else, go get a fancy toy or something, or a defensive player. Very interesting setup out there. That's a storyline I'll be watching.
I still think the Pete Carroll hire was more or less just a, hey, we need to build a culture. Excuse me. We just need the right person to steer the ship for a couple of years. And then it's like, in baseball or hockey where it's like you have a rebuilding team where it's like, we just need someone to get in here to kind of put the pieces in place. And then when we're ready to compete, you're going to be fired or in Pete's case for tire. And we're going to bring in do what the Bears just did by bringing in Ben Johnson. Eberflus was there. It was, hey, Eberflus could be the guy, but more than realistically, I don't think anyone expected him to stick. Meanwhile, it's the same sort of situation with the Raiders right now, where if the Raiders win 4, 5, 6 games next year, I don't think anyone's going to be shocked. Max Crosby is such a weird one to me for them, because you don't trade him, but if you have the calling to get what the Panthers should have got for Brian Burns, aka if they traded him a lot sooner than they did, I think you make the trade. But if you can't get at least 1 or 2 firsts for him, you don't move on from Crosby. It's just a weird one, because and I bring that up too because of the whole cryptic tweets from him where it's like, I'm going to win a championship one day, where it's like, well, you're not in the position to do so now. But then again, who's going to want to pay for who's going to be that team to really strike for him?
Well, and we talk about him. One, it does seem like things have been smoothed over there a little bit. They could also just be saying that. And a lot can change between now and free agency, or now and the trade deadline midseason.
Now in the combine.
Well, yeah, the combine, lots of opportunities here for things to change. Um, with everything we just said about the Patriots and about how, there's always an opportunity and you never know how fast it's going to come. All that applies to Vegas too. If you're Max Crosby and you're sitting there like, all right, now we got a coach, and maybe we get a quarterback in this draft, and now we're taking off. Maybe that does make him want to stay there. The other thing, I was playing around with trade scenarios. I mentioned the Shedeur Sanders thing for a reason. If Sanders is on the board at 4 when the Patriots are on the clock, would the Raiders make a move up to go get him? And if they would, like I was kind of just looking at what the Raiders could give up in a trade, and Max Crosby is a name that's interesting. Would they give up Crosby in a trade up? I think that might get very complicated trying to do that because I don't know if you give up Crosby to move up 2 spots in the first. And I think it would be a weird spot, but in New England and in this defense, that would be a huge ad.
No. It definitely would. Look, first and foremost with that, there's one player on defense I want. If they take him at 4, I'll be happy. I think you know where I'm going.
Abdul Carter is my guess.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm kind of bought in on it. Like I know because there's going to be a subs. So if they go that route at 4, which I still think that I know Daniel Jeremiah and his mock had them going there, and there's a rumor that the Titans might take him. I still think that's a smokescreen to try to get a team to move up. I still think that's a team where it's like, hey, we can take Carter at 1, and if there's a team out there that really wants Carter, it's them going like, hey, we're going to do to you what the Bears did to the Panthers. I don't think that happens. I still think they go quarterback because if you have Abdul Carter and Jeffrey Simmons on your D line, that's a fantastic duo. Don't get me wrong. But running Will Levis or Mason Rudolph back is just showing like, hey, we're not really a serious organization. We got the piece that like, hey, it could help our football team, but like long term, it doesn't do anything. Meanwhile, it's probably going to be Cam Ward at 1. Cleveland at 2 is the really interesting domino because I feel like it could go in a magnitude of ways, and even I think the Myles Garrett trade situation is a lot more something to take serious note of than the Max Crosby one. Like I think there's actually a legitimate chance that it happens.
Yeah, I agree. They're going back to Tennessee for a second. One thing that's going to be interesting with them is like, do they try to add a quarterback in free agency? I think this is something that we jump ahead to the draft talk without kind of thinking of the fact that team needs are going to change so much in the next month and a half here once we hit the market and teams can start filling things. And as a team like Tennessee, like Cleveland, the Giants decide to make a move for a veteran quarterback and kind of tip off what they're thinking at the top of this draft. I don't know who's going to be on the market, but like I wonder if like does Derek Carr end up getting moved? And if you're Tennessee, are you like this is a good enough stopgap because we don't like the guys in the draft this year? Daniel Jones, does someone talk themselves into being able to fix him? Guys like that where it's like, okay, would you rather just go for a cheap option, take who you think is the best player on the board and punt on this draft class because guys don't like the quarterbacks this much? I mean, top quarterback in this draft probably is the 6th off the board in last year's. Like, so do you want to be taking this year's Kenny Pickett at number 1 overall when you could take Abdul Carter?
Yeah, I agree with that too. I still think that there is one quarterback who potentially could hit the free agency market that I still think his current team is waiting for them to make the first move, that being Aaron Rodgers. I still think he wants – well, no, because I think he wants New York to say, I don't want you, and then, he can play the victim card of like, no one wants me, the Jets don't want me, paint them as the bad guys when it's really, a wolf in sheep's clothing or sheep in wolf's clothing. I don't remember which – you know the saying.
Yeah.
Like I'll Google it after, and whatever the correct answer is,
wolf and sheep's. Yeah,
wolf in sheep's clothing. That's the title of the podcast too. That's what I do. Get random titles and go from there. But I think it's waiting for that, and then it's this whole revenge tour for him. Which A, gets him out of the division, which great. But then B, it's him going off and being like, hey, look at me, no one wants me, feel bad for me. But in reality, it's like, okay, you're still a bit of an asshole, but you're still good at football, so it's like a double-edged sword. That's where Tennessee comes in handy, though. That's where Tennessee comes into play.
Is he still good at football? Because I've just been looking at it, assuming that he was going to retire.
I think what's going to – here's a scenario for him could be he hits the free agency market, no one wants him, and then he retires, where it's like, I'm choosing to retire when in reality it's no, Aaron. No one wanted to sign you. So it's like, take the high road and, call it quits. He still is a first ballot Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong, which – hey, the 2025 draft class could be him and Travis Kelce for all we know. But which we'll get into Super Bowl later on, but that's still a take I have. I think regardless if they win or lose, I think he's done. I know we had the one. Yeah, I just look at it where it's like, what's left to accomplish? That's what I look at. He's won 3 Super Bowls. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Is he the best tight end of all time? I don't know, but still he has that resume where it's like,
it's if you look conversation.
Yeah, he's in that top. He's in that top 5 conversation. I only say no because obviously, look, there's a New England bias for me, but then also too, the fact that he doesn't know, and I know everyone likes to look at it, and I'm not calling him a glorified wide receiver. But when I see someone who's run blocking, I'm just like, I look at George Kittle, and I'm like, that's the whole resume for the tight end. Meanwhile, Travis Kelsey, I look at it as I'm like, the run blocking has just been always a bit of an issue to me. Because
Yeah.
how you see like when George Kittle goes out there and blocks someone, he's like screaming and having fun like a 5-year-old playing at the park. I'm like, God damn it, that guy loves football. I'm not trying to discredit Travis or anything like that, but also there is
He's
the
a
acting. What?
he's a finesse guy.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, he catches the ball, he does this and this and this. It's the whole debate too, which I still say, and I don't want to debate it. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that after though. But so the top of the draft's interesting because New York's another very interesting team to me, the Giants. I've seen everyone say, "What if you pair Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors?" And I'm like, "Okay, cool. They're still going to win 3 games or 4 games." Like that does it's like, "Hey, we're flat." It's like that game where it's like, um, the meme where the guy's spraying champagne on himself and he's in 3rd
Oh, yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah.
That would be the Giants drafting Travis Hunter, where it's like, "Look at us, we're cool." It's like, "Okay, cool, but you lost 48-7." It's
Yeah.
like makes unreal catch and the game's over and you got your butt kicked.
It's gonna be the football version of, what do you call the Shohei Ohtani, Tungsten Armo Doyle memes, like,
Yeah.
it's Travis Hunter gets touchdown and pick six in the same game. Giants lose 48-14.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. Because then the draft, and then it starts to bleed out with the draft order though. Because like the Giants are seeing, I still think they go quarterback. I still think if they don't, that's kind of telling the fans, hey, we're punting on this season. And if you do that, people are going to lose their jobs. Like with Tennessee, no one's jobs in jeopardy unless I think they're truly really bad. I think Brian Callahan's safe. Cleveland, I still say this. I don't think Kevin Stefanski's at fault for anything. I think it's just, he has to play the cards that he's dealt. And then you have New York where people's jobs are on the line. And then that's why with New England this year, it's like a stress-free draft because I know like they could go move back. They could go offensive line. They can go Abdul Carter. They can go, I call him Tet because I think it's Tatoria McMillan, the
Yeah,
guy
it's
from
called
Arizona.
yeah,
Yeah.
Teteroa, yeah, Tet
I call him
McMillan's.
Tet. Even though for
Yeah.
me, call me crazy, but I would love a Mecca Ibuka in a Patriots uniform. I don't think it'll happen. I think he goes somewhere in the teens. But the worst Ohio State scenario I have for you, because Pat had a draft crush in 2021, the first ever draft coverage I saw from him, and that was Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton's on Kansas City and a free agent. Nick Bolton's going to walk, and Jack Sawyer is going to be a Kansas City Chief. Isn't that just how this thing goes?
I could see that,
Mhm.
as a Michigan fan, someone who
Ooh,
already I'm a Jack Sawyer hater over here. He's a good player. He's a good player. If he comes to New England, I think he'd be a fit. But if he ends up in Kansas City, I get to keep that going. Yeah, Bolton. It's one thing that's interesting. Just jumping ahead real quick about the Super Bowl. You mentioned Bolton. Bolton and Zach Bond for the Eagles are 2 guys who are massive, like, pieces in their defenses at the second level. What they do as linebackers, both hitting the market after the season. Curious to see, how much money they get and do they get re-signed? How much do these teams value having that specific player? How much are they willing to pay for them? Because we've seen the linebacker market, I think, is for off the ball guys is starting to creep back up a little bit.
yeah.
And that's because teams are realizing that it's oftentimes a better hit rate to just wait for a veteran and go sign them than try to draft these guys because it's so difficult to draft them, so reliant on the mental traits to find a good linebacker. Um, so they just wait and pay. So do these guys even hit the market? Do Kansas City and Philly know that we got to get it, we got to re-sign them before they even hit that point, and somebody can overpay them? We'll see.
My thing with Kansas City is just that, like, look, Hollywood Brown and Juju probably will stay on cheaper deals. Because Hollywood
Mhm.
Brown has like Hollywood. Both the guys are like, hey, you know what? They had their moments, but that's not like he did anything. Not impressive, but they were like hurt or just like missing in action for most of the year. Where it's like, hey, just resign. You're going to be in competitive modes. We'll probably use you more because we all know Hollywood Brown is going to be the focal. I thought Hollywood Brown would do what Juju did in 22. He goes to Kansas City, gets
Yeah,
to a championship or wins a championship, and then signs with an obscure team, not New England this time, to
for
where
too
then
much
he
money.
got, yeah, he gets too much money from a certain team, like what New England did with Juju 2 years ago. That's what I thought Hollywood Brown's going to be. But now I think they're going to re-sign him. The big thing with me with Kansas City is you've got two defenders that are going to want big contracts. You've got George
Mhm.
Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie. Both were first rounders in 22. Both are going to want to get paid because I still say this. I don't want to say he's underrated, but I feel like he's so underappreciated until he has those big moments in games that George Karlaftis truly everyone looks at and goes, "Oh yeah, he's not an F the play up kind of guy like an Aiden Hutchinson or a Max Crosby, but he's definitely a game record where you need to play from him. He's going to go out there and make it. And he's a great complementary piece to Chris Jones. And then you have Trent McDuffie, which look, we'll put the thing aside about New England trading with the pick away, but you've got an all-pro cornerback, which we know Kansas City last year literally told Janarius Sneed to kick rocks. I don't think they do that with McDuffie. I feel like if anything, one of them will get extended, one of them will get franchised. But is that a rabbit? Kansas City's got some hoops to play, but I still think if they do three-peat next Sunday, I don't think they'll have a problem signing guys. It's if they don't, then I can see guys, quote unquote, chasing the bag.
What's interesting about this, I think McDuffie is the more important player
Yeah.
of the two for what he does for them schematically, but also Kansas City. I was listening to a podcast, and this was probably a year and a half ago now. So fuzzy on some of the details, but it's just a discussion on analytics in football. And they talked about how the Chiefs were using it big time for their secondary scouting, and this was heading into the 2023 season. So this is when they basically were not afraid to turn over their backfield because they felt that they had a leg up
Yeah.
in scouting players and they could replace people. But now you've got McDuffie, who really is one of those guys who I don't know if you can replace him so easily. Um, so I'm curious to see where they go with it. Carl Loftus, you mentioned he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Trey Flowers for New England, just
Yeah.
physical, tough, will crush the pocket. And even if he's not like maybe not as big of a QB hits guy, but he'll get pressures just by collapsing the pocket, and he's going to give your offensive lineman fits all day with how physically he plays.
Yeah, like there was a podcast from years ago from PFF. They're both no longer with the company, but Tailgate, like Austin Gale and Mike Renner, and like they had
Mhm.
their draft show. And I always remember George Karlaftis was one of the names they were mentioning going into that 22 draft as someone that hey could potentially spark and break out. And now look, the guy doesn't know how to lose in the playoffs, which I think more than what Pat Mahomes is doing is more remarkable. That there's two draft classes from their team that do not know what it feels like to lose in the playoffs. So that's another interesting point. But yeah, I love the comp for Karlaftis. It's not saying that we're out here saying, oh, he's bad, or me not saying he's not on the Aiden Hutchinson level. It's more or less, like you say, he's going to get pressure. He may not get the hits, but when last Sunday, when that pocket was collapsing and Josh Allen was having to make a pressure throw, who was right there in his face? It was
Yeah.
56.
Yeah,
He
he's
based,
doing a great job. Well, and he's like, you're not going to have all blue chip. If you could have a roster of 53 blue chip guys, you'd love that. Not usually going to be the case. So, you need your guy that's an 88 overall in Madden who can complement the 95 overall you have at defensive tackle to, finish plays and make some other plays with the other opportunities. Even a great defensive lineman. Those guys are impacting what 8 to 10 snaps in a game and those are like the really good games, and 60 snaps in a game, 65 snaps in a game on offense. So it's a lot of other plays that you have to account for in effect.
it's like Detroit too when they went down with injuries. One significant loss for them was always when Lee McNeil tore his ACL late in the
Yeah,
season. Yeah,
huge.
there's certain guys that like hell. Let's put a New England twist on it. When Christian Barmore this year, look, that's another situation on its own where I still say this. There's certain injuries in this world where you want the person to be healthy first, then the football player healthy, and that's one of them. But when Christian Barmore's in there, you feel it. And that's the other thing too with him, where it's like I always said going to like last year's draft, people call me crazy, but I was like, I would love Mason Graham in New England. Speaking of Michigan, you pair the two D tackles up because it's who's behind Barmore. I don't think it will happen, but with New England, there's so many needs on this team to where if they don't go for that quote unquote sexy pick in the first round, aka offensive lineman or receiver, people are going to lose their minds. But just know that the people who like us, like, because I always say with football fans, there's the levels of like football fandom where there's like the lowest one is doesn't watch the game at all. Those people are weird, especially next Sunday. Then you have the people who just tune in for next Sunday are like, oh, like what's going on here? Or like, oh, Kendrick Lamar. Then there's the casual fan, like they're in the know, but they don't like know the know. Like, and then there's us, like, know the know, live, breathe 24/7, 365 can talk about football. That's why I have a football podcast. Out of Every
Yeah.
sport, like if you look behind me, there's many sports advertised, but I talk football because it's the one that I can talk the most. Like I love hockey, but like there's times where I just like I'm like there's not like literally nothing will happen. Meanwhile, football, there's what from mini camp to training camp where nothing's going on. So that's what makes it
Yeah,
exciting.
that's your
Yeah.
off season. Yeah. Well, I know you got a Leafs flag up there, so you got plenty of long off season.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know that.
Had to
But
throw in a
we're
little
not here
something.
we're not here talking about it. I got the flag here. I have the logo over there as I almost knocked my Canadian
I
minis,
start
my
I start
Canadian.
I start trash talking the Leafs, and you're breaking your set.
God damn it, we're really having a Sunday scaries here. But yeah, with New England, like that's where I'm trying to get into it, where it's like the football people are going to tell you Abdul Carter was the right pick all along, especially next year too, when he's wreaking havoc. Because look, there's so many avenues they can go, but offensive tackles you can still get in the second round. Wide receivers you can find day 2, day 3. Because I always say this that like how you're saying with the quarterbacks earlier, it's like you don't know what it's going to be. There's a lot of like punting on them. I still think the draft's won on Friday and Saturday. You could say,
Oh, it is.
yeah, because
It's lost on Thursday, and it's won on Friday and Saturday.
yeah, because if you don't hit on your first round pick, it looks bad. But if you hit on a day 2 or day 3 talent, like the Patriots have, and for all the crap Belichick gets for not being able to draft, the last 3 drafts he had, there's always like one pick from day 2 or day 3 that's hit. Like if you look at Christian Barmore and Ramondre Stevenson, you have Marcus Jones from 2022. You have the 2020 draft class is littered with guys that were day 2 and day 3 because they didn't have a day 1 pick.
Yeah,
And even
and then Pop Douglas. Like I do think it's kind of
Kayshon Boutte.
ironic. Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic that like when Bill needed a draft class to kind of save him and bail out some of the mistakes he'd made previously, he kind of got what he needed. It was just too little, too late. He finally got a couple decent-ish receivers there. I still figure out exactly how good Pop Douglas and Kayshon Boutte are, but they're NFL guys, and Christian Gonzalez looks like all pro level good at
Mhm.
corner, and Keon White. You at least see the flashes with him. Mapu, obviously, I think we're still working on, and some of those offensive linemen, we're still working on. But with the other guys, that's a pretty good draft class. Yeah, and it's one of the best. One of the teams that's been to the Super Bowl twice in the last 5 years. The main guy on their defense, a fifth round linebacker, and Fred Warner. Like that's where you can win the draft on Saturday by finding a guy like that. We know all too well Tom Brady.
The guy that was, and I still say this, and I'll say this to you because you and I've never done this before, but I have the book version of the Dynasty over my book counter, which is off to my left side. And I always say for Patriots fans to read that book because if you want like the true story of how everything unfolded, it's
Is this
literally
what? Is this? Are you gonna talk about Dick Rabine too in the Tom Brady stuff?
no
Because
the Jeff
he's.
Benedict book.
Oh yeah, no. Well, you were talking about just the Brady pick.
No,
I
no,
haven't
no,
read
no,
the
no.
book,
He
but I
he
know
goes
Dick.
into detail of like how Brady was like upset and everything, and he was
Oh
going how
yeah.
he was literally going for a walk, and then he got the call of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're taking a flyer on you and all this stuff, and then taking a flyer on a kid from San Mateo, California, turned into one of the greatest careers in NFL history.
Yep. I do. I think one of the big what ifs in football history is what happens if he doesn't have to share time with Drew Henson in college, and he gets a full season, and nobody is doubting, you know, the situation. He's gonna have much better numbers and none of this weird red flag baggage. I wonder where he ends up going then.
I don't know if he would go first round, but I definitely think he goes round 2 or 3. I definitely think he
Yeah,
goes round 2 or 3.
yeah, because I mean, you look at he's got the physical side, not obviously the weight, but the length, the frame that you want in a quarterback, the height. His arm strength is something to this day that is still incredibly underrated. He
Yeah.
could whip it, and he would have had winning pedigree at a top school in the Big Ten with a win over Alabama in the Orange Bowl to cap it off. That's a pretty good resume that coaches like.
Yeah, no, it is because I always remember it was the Orange Bowl that really I think put him on the map to get him more looks and stuff like that going into the draft, and it was the Drew Henson the Henson thing. I think is just because there was some blunders there and there was some questioning from Michigan coaching staff, so I put that more on the team as a whole than Tom himself, where it's just Drew was supposed to be which is ironic that he took out 2 guys named Drew in 2 different
Yeah, I know.
organizations, in Michigan and in New England, but that's where I look at it, where it's the coaches didn't have the exact faith in him because even coming into Michigan from San Mateo, it was always doubted. There was the struggles at Michigan because he, like I said, from San Mateo, going to the other side of the country to be a Wolverine, to then fully embracing the way, and then eventually, hey, lending himself to the career that he carved out for himself.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah. But well, look, no, it's the what ifs. The big what if that I still have, and it involves Mahomes, because everyone's like, what if Buffalo didn't trade the pick? Well, Buffalo takes whoever, and then he goes 11 to the Saints. That's still a what if to me, because with that draft, how everyone's like, oh, he goes first overall. You can't look at me dead in the face and tell me he turns an 0-17 Cleveland team into a Super Bowl contender. No offense to Cleveland Browns fans out there, or even the
no,
Bears.
the situation was very important for Mahomes
It
becoming what
got
he
Cliff
is now.
Kingsbury a job.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah, I still fully believe that too. Where I remember the funniest thing was last Sunday. It was the Texas Tech football account, kind of like flexing their muscle, and everyone's literally like, "You never won a bowl game with him."
Yeah, that's so funny.
It's just
Scoring 50 points and losing by double figures.
Shadow Bake. That was one of the most legendary games, Texas Tech and Oklahoma. And
Yeah.
now you have a mini Mahomes up in Lincoln, Nebraska in the Big Ten, which I don't know
Is he
what
good?
I don't know if he's good or not, but I feel like because he does the weird. I never minded the mannerisms things. It was kind of creepy, but it was when he won the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium, and he's like acting like he just won, like, the Natty, and I'm like, what are we doing here? I'm like, I understand a bowl game's a bowl game, but it's the Pinstripe Bowl. You didn't win, like, you're not like a New Year's Six, or even the Florida Bowls that are played around there, like the one that your school, Michigan, won this year. Yeah, wait, Michigan beat Bama. Yeah, Michigan beat Bama
Yeah,
this
we
year.
did.
Yeah, in Tampa, or like the Citrus Bowl. It's like, it's the Pinstripe Bowl.
But
Like,
this was when's the last time Nebraska won a bowl game though?
fair point. With Matt Rule and his bib smock thing that he wore in Carolina, which, fun fact, I was actually in Boston the day he was fired from the Panthers.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, but no, I'm not trying to dunk on Nebraska. I'm just trying to say, like, there's certain things to him where I feel like he's going to put up decent numbers, and everyone's going to go, oh, he looks like Mahomes. He trains with Mahomes. He's going to be
Mhm.
Mahomes. And I'm like, I be careful what you wish for there. That's the only thing I'm saying. Be like, look like a duck, talk like a duck, act like a duck.
We'll see. We'll see if he can play in the NFL like a duck.
Yeah, because I still say that too, where I still feel like with Mahomes, it's the Chiefs recognizing it, but then too, if Sean Payton, that's the thing too. If Mahomes goes to the Saints, where is that team right now?
And that's where's Sean Payton? Like I'm just been, that's change that would change a lot of things in the NFL.
There's so many different Pandora's boxes that could be open, where it's like, oh, like, what about this? What about that? Like, what if Josh Allen goes to not Buffalo? What if he goes somewhere else? Which, I don't think Josh Allen is an example of perfect situation. I think that's a perfect example of a quarterback realizing what he needs to do to take the next step, and truly harnessing it and just locking into that, where it's like,
Yeah.
because that's the thing that's why I'm excited with Drake May, because when Bills fans talk to me about Josh's first year, where it's didn't have an O line, didn't have any weapons, but we saw the talent there. That's the thing with this year with Drake, where there's that confidence and that sense of optimism going into this year, where it's, hey, Drake has the potential. Just put him in front of an offensive line that's not built overnight, and taking red eye flights into New England to play, or practice squad guys. Given the weapons thing, to me, is not even it's not that it's not an issue, but it's not like they have to go out and like overhaul the roster and bring in guys, because I still think if they could get a good wide receiver one, it will help the other guys on the team. It opens up Kendrick Bourne for better opportunity. It opens up Pop Douglas, Kayshawn Booty. It makes these guys better. But there is one area for the draft that I do want New England to go into, and that is running back. That, like,
And this is where I think this is probably one of the bigger blunders by the team was to sign Ramondre Stevenson to the extension they gave him, which hasn't even kicked in yet, because give him a decent chunk of money for a guy who was not performing and how he didn't perform this past season. And it's a very good running back class. You can find guys, and I think with it's not the biggest need for New England, but the roster's not good. You're in the business of getting good players right now, so you can't afford to look a gift horse in the mouth if one of these guys is there and you're on the clock and you think he's going to make your football team better.
It's exactly what Patriots fans 3 years ago wanted Kevin Harris to be. That's what I think
Yeah.
you're looking for. You want that third down running back who's going to catch balls out of the backfield. Sign Antonio Gates to not Antonio Gates. That would be interesting. Sign Antonio Gibson. Give him a 1 to 2 year extension. The only reason I'm not pissed about the Ramondre extension is because every extension New England signed last offseason what has backdoor escape routes.
Hmm.
There's ways that they can get out of them. It's not terrible. Like I actually want to look up the Stevenson one quickly. Fun fact for Matt, I do a lot of things on the fly here. Let's see.
Nice. Well, the issue with the Stevenson contract, they just can't. They have a decent sized dead cap hit through the first like 2 years of it.
And I'm opening up Spot Track right now, which it's loading, but yeah, so right now, his cap hit for this year is 5.3 million.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Cap hit. Okay. The dead cap hit for this season would be $6 million. Next year would be 3.2. I think if in
You can eat that, yeah.
so if in and that's the thing too, with the cap going up, with revenue greater than ever, because I still say this for every league in the sporting world, there's only one that wasn't affected by the pandemic. That's the NFL. They weren't
Mhm.
affected to an extent, but that's kind of the mental saying I had 5 years ago where I was like, oh, this is not going to bother the NFL. It's like a bug on a windshield. But
Mhm.
that's why they're still able to make record profits, also because TV money, which I still think they do have an out in the TV contracts. I think after 2028, I still think they're going to do that to try to negotiate more, especially after what the NBA just did.
Yeah, oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at it right here. Like, so he makes 2.75 this year, 4.75 in 26, 27 is 6 million, and then it's 8 million there. But in 27 and 28, there's no dead cap. So
You can move on from by then.
yeah, so you can move on from him by then. If this year he doesn't have the best season, that's where next year you cut ties, you eat the 3.2 million. It's literally $3,250,000.
Mhm.
That's not a lot for an NHL, an NFL team to eat. So that's why I'm not too worried about it. There is some other contracts now. Everyone's like, oh, down on Kyle Duggar, but turns out, look, he shouldn't even been playing this year with the injuries he had. And then with the tight end room, that's another one. I don't necessarily know if you draft someone, if you trade someone, but I'd lean draft just because there's a lot of really good underrated tight end prospects this year in the draft.
Yeah.
Hopefully, someone from Iowa
It's
emerges.
yeah, well, the tight end stuff is interesting to me because one, I think they end up bringing Austin Hooper back. He's got familiarity with your quarterback, with your head coach, and with your offensive coordinator.
Even without AVP.
Yeah, because Austin Hooper played with Josh McDaniels in Vegas, and he played
Right,
or,
right.
or under him there. He played under Vrabel in Tennessee, and he's got familiarity
Mhm.
with May. So, I think he's a useful player, and they all know how to work with him.
He was also decent this year too. Like he's the guy that I'm sorry to
Yep.
cut you off, but like I remember going into the year, there was two players I said that were going to be of impact, or not of impact, but like guys where I'm like, I'm excited to see what they can bring. One was him, and one was a rookie that we'll talk about in a sec. But I just want to throw that out there that if Austin Hooper's that kind of guy where it's like Josh Uche last year, where I'm like, if he walks away, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But if he signs, hey, welcome me back with open arms.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring him back just for continuity here with the quarterback,
Yeah,
and then like I like Jaheim Bell. I like the pick a lot. Is he a fit for what Josh McDaniels is going to want to do? I'm not 100% sure. He's still very much a developmental guy. He didn't do that much last season. So, that's not a guy who's going into next year with a roster spot locked up by any means. Um, and especially, you bring in a new regime. From the sound of things, they're going to be very willing to shake things up here internally. So a guy like Jaheim Bell, like he's probably on the outside looking in right now, even though I liked him. So there's room to sign someone, there's room to draft someone, there's room to do both. We talked before about, if you're trading back with the Raiders, let's say in the draft, uh, another name that, is interesting here is Mayer, the tight
I
end from the
literally was
Raiders.
saying that.
Yeah, because he's now tight end 2 in Vegas, and he's been okay through 2 years. They drafted him under Josh McDaniels, and you could use, a backup, and he can kinda take the Jaheim Bell spot on this roster as a guy with more talent, and I liked him coming out. So, tight ends take a couple of years anyway, so, that's definitely a name to watch, even without a trade back. I wouldn't be surprised to see New England say, "Hey, we give you a 6th or a 5th for Mayer and a 6th."
I literally said that. Some people were just like, "Oh, no, it's like they're gonna probably run 2 tight end sets. They don't have anyone to throw to." Because look, Jacoby's fine, but he still has that thing now where he's like he'll sizzle for a couple games and then he'll pop for a few games.
Mhm.
Um, I this is gonna sound weird, but there is a tight end out of Old Miss that I see his wife on my For You page a lot. I don't know his name, but I just know his last name's Priest Corn from Old Miss. He'll probably he's at the East West Shrine Bowl. He'll probably be day 2 or day 3. So if you take a flyer on a guy like that, I'm fine.
Mhm.
The other guy, by the way, that I was always excited about going into the year, and he proved me great as a gunner, is Marcellus Dial. By the way, the only defensive pick of last year's draft.
I liked yeah, I wasn't quite sure what they were looking for in Dial, but he's just a straight line speed guy with the length and the physicality you need for special teams, and yeah, good player there.
It was kind of like, hey, I need to be a gunner. What can I do to make the roster? We need you to be a gunner. Okay, I'm going to be the best gunner that I can be. And look, he proved to be a great gunner because special teams, special moments, special people. So that's where
Well,
you
and
go
we
with
didn't
that.
one thing we didn't talk about at all this season and all of the issues with New England was that they lost Matthew Slater. That was essentially a non-issue because he trained his own replacement, and
Oh
then
yeah.
they drafted Dial to kind of take the other spot, and yeah, they're kind of locked up there for the next couple of years. You won't have to worry about your gunners, your core special teams guys.
Which I know, and going into safeties, losing Belichick and Pellegrino, I expected one. I didn't expect both. I understand it's a business. One coach I am so glad is back though is Jeremy Springer. That is someone that needed to have brought back because hell, even after Belichick, special teams last year was still like you saw Brandon Schooler, where it's like I'm literally keeping on quoting. So I think you know him. His name's McGarvin. He comes on here a lot with me.
Yes.
He literally comes on here and says about Brandon Schooler making plays that impact games on special teams. And that's what he did. And that's why he was so important. Jeremy Springer was so important to bring back. I love the coaching staff they're assembling. One hire, though, that I haven't really gotten to talk about a lot, though, since starting this. Look, Thomas Brown, I'm okay with. It is what it is. I know everyone's going to look at like what happened in Chicago, but I'm like, he's there for a reason. The Ben McAdoo stuff's a little weird. I don't really know what to think about him being in charge of the defenses. But Doug Marrone as offensive line coach, I don't think we can understate how important that is for New England.
See, it's not. I have to look a little bit more into some of his stuff, but I know that like some of his more recent offensive line work has gotten mixed reviews. So I think it's good to have experience in the building. Marone probably is not a bad coach. I'm not sure if he's like a great offensive line coach. And this is where what I will say is this: I don't dislike the coaching staff as a whole, but my concern when they went with Vrabel was just, are they going to lean? Are they going to go from one end of the dial with inexperience all the way to the other end of the dial without taking into account that there are other things that are important to being a good football coach than just experience? And not opposed to Marone, very open to the fact that he could be a stabilizing force for this line. I'm not totally in love with the hire. It's not inspired, which it doesn't have to be good. But
No,
curious to see how it ends up playing out. It's going to be a different style of offensive line from last year. So, like,
it,
curious for who they like. One of the issues for drafting, developing offensive linemen is that you need continuity to build not just with the players, but the coaches to build the skills that you're going to use. And this is what, fifth straight season that they'll have a different offensive line coach. So
yeah,
that's also like Cole Strange is going to be in the fourth year of his contract, never having had the same offensive line coach for consecutive seasons, and all the guys they've drafted in that span. And Onwenu is a guy who I think only had consecutive coaches for 2020 and 2021. So like he's had 5 coaches in 6 years or whatever it is for him. Makes it easy to waste previous draft capital.
yeah. Like that's the thing this year too is like you can hope Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson take those next steps. We'll see what happens with City. So I still think you have to bring in a center. You have to bring in someone there. I only
Yeah.
say I like the Doug Marone hire just because of look, I know some of his work's been a little spotty over the last few years, but it's just for me, I'm not asking for him to be a Jeff Stoutland. I'm not asking for Hank Fairley. I'm not asked. That's unrealistic to ask for, even
Or
though I think,
Callahan. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Which even look, Bill Callahan went to Tennessee and like their offensive line was okay this year, but it wasn't anything to like, Gawk. Meanwhile, they are starting to build to the trenches there with like Lloyd Cushenberry. They have J.C. Latham. They have Peter Skoronski. So start to get pieces like that, and it could help. But then at the same time, too, you still have to. I think they have to figure out as well, what do we have internally before you look externally? Because if I look at this offensive line, I think Strange, Andrews, Owenu, those are like the interior is kind of the
Mhm.
lock of the team. Do you go out and get Ronnie Stanley as a left tackle? We'll see what they do. I'm kind of if the injury concerns weren't there, I would say yes, fully in on him. But as long as Viridian Lowe is a swing tackle and he's not your day one starter, I'm okay with it. He's someone that, look, I know 23, he got fed to the Wolves a lot. He was getting ripped to shreds online. 2024, he was okay and he got a touchdown. So you never really heard his name called. It's just, it's the right side. I do not need to see 75. He can be in a nice, clean uniform every Sunday. His uniform doesn't need to get dirty.
Yeah, no, it's funny because left tackle is the position that gets the buzz, but it's not the worst of the two tackle spots for New England last
Nope.
year. Like right tackle is you have to go from bad to decent at right tackle now. Like
Yeah.
you're at the very bottom end of decent at left tackle right now. You want to improve it. You want a franchise tackle. You want to set it and forget it with your blindside spot and not have to worry about that for the next decade when you
Yeah.
got a quarterback. But like right tackle was the problem spot last year, and that's where you look at free agency. Cam Robinson is a name that gets thrown around. Obviously, this is PFF, so I don't know if the numbers are gospel, but they give Cam Robinson and Vidarian Lowe like the same pass block grade last year. Robinson's a better run blocker, but like literally no offensive lineman or tackle at least gave up more pressures than Cam Robinson did last season. Part of that is just, scheme and how many opportunities you get. It wasn't like, oh, like it doesn't mean he's the worst left tackle, but that's a name that gets thrown around for New England. And if do we want to give that guy big money? I don't know.
That's where it gets interesting, because then even the other option too is, I know going into the Super Bowl, Kansas City, it's so interesting how their offensive line works, because you have Creed Humphrey, who's probably one of the best centers in the league. You have Joe Tooney, who's just building an amazing career, potentially getting his 5th next Sunday. But then you have Trey Smith, who's a free agent. Do you bring in
Yes.
Trey Smith and kick Owenu out to tackle? I would love to, but we've seen when Owenu at tackle just looked, he wasn't bad. He was just out of place. It was just not the, I'm going to use a Gen Z term. It was not the vibe.
See, what I would consider doing is signing Trey Smith and flipping him over to left guard. Uh,
I like that.
put him there and shore up the interior because, I think we saw improvement from Layden Robinson. Not nearly enough improvement to lock him into anything close to a starting spot for next year. Cole Strange, I like. I think he can be a useful player in this league. Hopefully, he can be an NFL starter. He's nothing but a question mark right now. Those are you'd love to see these guys perform well in camp and earn roles, but I think if you go into next season just hoping that they're going to earn roles, well, if they don't, now you have no backup plans. You've got nothing. And I honestly thought left guard was a bigger issue last year than left tackle because Vidarian Lowe wasn't perfect, but he generally did a good job of just like forcing guys around the edge so like May could step up. Problem was he didn't have room to step up because the guards were not good enough.
Is Vidarian Lowe, if you were to compare him to like a fast food restaurant, we would safe to say it's like a McDonald's, where it's like, it's not good for you, but it kind of gets the job done when you're hungry. Like it kind of
But
does that, where it's like you could be doing better, but it did satisfactory.
I would
It's
put
satisfying.
him. He's in like the Burger King tier,
Oh, I like
or
that too.
like it's because like McDonald's, like you feel guilty about it, but it tastes good. Like it tastes really good. You
Yeah,
go to Burger King, you're like, like it wasn't bad, but like
or
I could
Taco
have gotten
Bell.
something. Yeah, I'm a longtime lover of Taco Bell.
Well, that's why I say McDonald's with Lowe, because it's like the same sort of thing. Like, look, I like Taco Bell. Like, I like both too. But when I say McDonald's, I'm not trying. Like, I'm not saying it's like, oh, people put the elite of the elite. I meant in the sense of like, I could be getting something better for myself, but I'm going. It's gonna taste. It's gonna taste how it tastes.
It's gonna do the job, and it's not gonna be sexy, and it's gonna be cheap.
That's exactly where I think the Viridian low to McDonald's comparison comes in. So
Yeah, no, I get that.
I'm starting to brainstorm now. So if next year you have David Andrews at center, you have Cole Strange as your swing guard center, you have Michael Wenu at right guard, you have Trey Smith at left guard,
Mhm.
you bring in someone or you draft a left tackle and him and Lowe swing in, and then right tackle too as well. Do you start Caden Wallace day one at right tackle? I don't know if you can. I still think he's a guy that's got to earn it. He's got to earn it throughout the offseason if he
Yeah.
wants to have that starting job. So my big thing with the offensive line this year is you can't just go in and say, hey, we're going to have Chuks Okorafor, we're going to have all these other guys and do that. No. Even if you bring in someone that has question marks on them, I know I kind of dunked on Ronnie Stanley earlier, but if they bring him in, I'm not going to be mad about it. There's other guys as well, like even for when I think of drafting offensive linemen, because there is one for the 22 draft class that is up for question right now, and that's Tyler Linderbaum, who, my God, he's really starting to emerge himself as a great center in this league.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do stuff like that with the draft where it's like, hey, find that kind of player. Because look, the other options I look at as well because that 22 draft class had two tackles coming out that everyone thought were going to be great, but both of them turned out to be terrible. You have Evan Neal, who got turnstiled like crazy, who wasn't even starting by the end of the year. And then a name I don't think people recognize in a lot anymore, but Eki Ekwonu as well, coming out of North Carolina, NC State. His draft year, he was in rumors to be in the top 3, and then just, it just fizzled. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think this is something to be mindful of for Patriots fans here. Is that it's easy to say just take a tackle in the first and fix the issue. Not a guarantee that it's going to fix the issue, especially with the tackles available in this year's class. That's why I said, drafts aren't necessarily won on Thursday, but they can be lost on Thursday. If you miss on that first round pick, now you're playing from behind. You can make up for it on days 2 and 3, but you don't want to be living in that world every year. So, for New England, like I'm very much a proponent of build through the trenches. I think that is so important for football, and you have seen that this year.
look
That
at the 2
said,
teams left.
yeah, but that said, if the players that are available in the draft in the trenches are not guys you like, don't take them. Like it's like I like Abdul Carter, I like Mason Graham. If those two guys are off the board, the best player on the board is probably going to be a skill guy, offense or defense. And I would rather have a skill guy that I like, who I think is good enough to pick that high, than draft somebody in the trenches who I have questions about forcing it. Saying we need a tackle, so we're going to take a tackle here. All right, well, you just took a tackle who everyone thought was going to go at pick 12 at 4 and missed, a guy who might be a great receiver if you like McMillan a lot, or a great tight end if you like Tyler Warren, or a great corner if you like Will Johnson, or a great I'm trying to remember who else. I
You
don't
have to
think
say
they're
the
gonna.
Michigan guy. We all know that.
Yeah, I did. Ashton Genty. I don't think they would take Ashton Genty at 4. I think that's a lot for this team.
He's going to be a Dallas Cowboy. I'm just saying that right now. He's going to be a Dallas Cowboy.
It's so obvious. I feel like it won't happen.
It's like the waiting for it. It's just like I could also see too. I could see New Orleans with that pick because I do think
Yes.
Kamara is on his way out. I can see New Orleans going for him.
Yes. No, I could 100% see that. And you can see a scenario where, a team like, I'm probably not Carolina is what they've done, but like maybe the Bears just Ashton Genty's on the board and they just think he's like, they have him far and away their best player left on the board and they just say, we're going to take him.
That to me would be like, remember when the Steelers took Najee Harris, where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
you don't need him. He'll do the job. But I think for the Bears, they're a team where I'm like, if you don't go offensive line in the first round, that's not helping your football team in the immediate future. They might do something in free agency, but you'll see Bears fans like, look, if the New England defensive line is getting 9 sacks on your team, that's a problem.
Yeah, it was like a third of our sacks here
Yeah.
in one game. It was the worst pass rush in the NFL.
It was like I love that day where it's like, I love today. But one thing with New England too is the backup quarterback room. I've seen Joe Flacco's name get thrown out there. I'm not totally mad about that because I think you need, if you have it where it's Drake's your starter, you bring in a vet like a Flacco or someone, that's in those progressive commercials for backups that Jacoby Brissett ironically was in,
Mhm.
and you have Joe Milton. I think that's fine. That's the one reason where I think Alex Van Pelt deserves a lot of credit for the fact that when you saw Joe Milton in camp, it was, oh, he can't play football. He's not ready for the NFL. To when we saw Joe Milton in week 18, everyone was going to say, oh, the Bills were playing all their backups. The fact that he still did what he did, and I'll say this too, I was not mad about them winning that game. I will say this because if they get the number one overall pick, it was going to set off unrealistic expectations for this fan base. That would just be, honestly, it would just be too much to deal with.
Yeah. I was not I was upset that they no longer had the number 1 pick, but, like, it's never if you're winning games because your young players play well, you can't be mad about losing the draft stock, and that was the case for Milton. I like the Flacco name here too. Another big arm guy with some real experience to mentor, and, like, I think you still need Joe Milton insurance. We saw one great game. That's awesome. It doesn't mean that, we're going to see what he is in the future. It's still not a lock. So signing somebody like a Flacco who can raise the floor for your backups, take reps in camp, be a bit of a mentor, then you see where things are at the end of August, and maybe you keep 2 quarterbacks, maybe you keep 3 quarterbacks, maybe you're trading Milton. Who knows which way you want to go with it, but it gives you some flexibility, which I think that kind of speaks to the overall position of the Patriots right now. You have so many needs, but you're also probably going to have so many young players at those positions of need. And how do you address free agency in a way that allows you to bring in impact players and make the team better without signing guys who might take away snaps from young players that you want to be on the field? That's the square you have to circle here, and it'd be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah, because with like Joe Flacco too, like you knew he wasn't going to go back to Cleveland because they'd be calling for him to play immediately. And then with
Mhm.
Indianapolis, it's not a situation like the Colts were just in. Because I still say this, the Anthony Richardson experience was or is, oh, like the bastard did the Fortnite dance on us. I hated him ever since. But look, it's a ride it's like a carnival ride. You don't want to go on it. It's the state fair ones, the ones that are put together with like screws and bolts and they come apart. It's like, you go enjoy that. I'm going to stay over here and do me. You have fun with it though. That's how I look at Anthony Richardson. So with Joe Flacco, there's no pressure to play. I also look at names too, like Carson Wentz. I don't really know or care about that one, but like, what if they bring back Jimmy Garoppolo if they're really trying to hone in on former Patriots coming back to Foxborough?
Well, we were having the conversation before about guys who could start in Tennessee, Cleveland, or New York if they're looking for a bridge starter. And I wonder if Jimmy G ends up in one of those places.
I still have the scenario with Cleveland where they're going to go Travis Hunter at 2 and then Will Howard at 33. That's what I think Cleveland does.
I could definitely,
Or you punt and
definitely,
wait and get Drew Allar in 26.
yeah. See, I really thought that Drew Aller to the Giants at 3 was just going to be a lock. Like that just felt too on brand for every part of that. I'm a little disappointed it didn't come out this year, just because then you might have 3 quarterbacks off the board, and the Patriots can just take whoever they want it for.
May I interest you in Jackson Dart at number 3 to the New York Giants?
Oh, I don't think he'll go. He's like a day 3 guy, maybe a day 2 guy. I
I
don't
don't
think there's any way they see him going that high. That would be insane.
I still think that there's someone who's gonna take a flyer on. They're like they'll see certain moments from him, and then they'll be like, you know, hey, we can take a shot at that. We can take a chance on that. I say it half joking, half serious. It was McGarvin who got it in my head, and then ever since he said it, it's been being reported a lot where it's, hey, teams are valuing him a little higher than the fans are. So that's where I don't think he goes day 3, but I think he's one of those quarterbacks that when he goes, it's going to be, oh, we did not expect him going there. Like, I still say this with last year's draft. Had Washington lost the Sugar Bowl, I do think Michael Penix would have been a top 5 pick. I seriously think that some team would have jumped Arizona or the Chargers to go get him. I think it's just because of what your Wolverines did to him in the national championship
Yeah.
did lower his draft stock a little bit. Because, there was people out there being like, hey, we'll get him late day 1, early day 2. And it's like, no, you're not. I just think that the last impression is everything. Kind of like, look at what happened with Zach Wilson. Meanwhile, with Michael Penix, They lose that game to Texas. Everyone's going to see the Michael Penix from that game and ignore the red flags and look at the green flags and be like, hey, your red flags are there, but your green flags are your green flags. I don't know if you're a big Family Guy fan, but it's like the episode with Peter with the mystery box where it's like a boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. That's, I think, how a lot of these quarterbacks get evaluated by NFL scouts and teams.
And all it takes is one team to love him. I didn't realize that Jackson Dart's top 50 right now on the consensus board, which I did not realize he had moved that high. Like, I like his athletic profile, his ability to avoid sacks, generally accurate. The issue for him is, he's never had to make decisions, really. That offense, you don't read the field at all. So you're going to be starting from the ground floor, teaching him how to run an NFL offense. For a guy who's a little bit older, and that is of like second round, I would understand that if I'm the Giants. I'm curious though, because you look at the guys in this range, and it's Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel. We're now going to go a little bit lower, like Kyle McCord, Riley Leonard, even Curtis Rourke. I think that if the Giants don't get one of the top two quarterbacks, they'll end up taking someone from that group and seeing what happens.
I do think
Riley Leonard fits the Daniel Jones mold. You just want to keep doing that.
I do think with Dylan Gabriel, it's the same thing where it's like he has all the tools, just everyone's going to look at that Rose Bowl game and just go, oh, but then you should look at that Rose Bowl game and go, oh, Ryan Day they were like, oh, you're going to leave Jeremiah Smith wide open? All right, cool. We're going to let him cook. He's going to cook you. So I don't think the game's a slight on Dylan Gabriel, but it's that same sort of logic where they're going to see that and go, oh, this. Quinn Ewers, I still say this, he's going to get a GM fired. I don't know who's going to draft him. He's going to get someone fired because it's that Anthony Richardson of like, you weren't the best, because even he was good in the playoff game against Arizona, but then the blunders against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl is where I was just like, what are we doing here? I also say the Drew Aller stuff for Cleveland, just because I know there's that whole stuff. I think he's from the area. He grew up a Browns fan, so everyone's going to like connect the dots, kind of like with hockey, what some Leaf fans do. Connor McDavid's coming home in 26, but this isn't a hockey podcast. No, this year there's going to be a lot of those. There's going to be someone, though, I do think from that list of names you just mentioned that is really going to pop, and everyone's going to be, why didn't you draft him? It's like, well, no one saw this coming. It's kind of like the Mahomesian thing where it's like, no, because you can't look at anyone with a decent mind going into that 2018 season and say, hey, it's like the reaction of the Chiefs fans where they were like, we're never going to win a Super Bowl. Why are we taking this kid? Josh, one of my favorite draft time anniversaries is going into when they bring back that Bills tweet of the Buffalo Bills have selected Josh Allen, and all the replies are just negative to where now they will grovel at that man's feet. So it's just hilarious of how that one, not judging a pick, because that's why, like when people judge a draft class day 3 at 6:00, I'm like, guys, I know he's fired now and he's back with San Francisco, but Robert Saleh said it best. You got to give it 2 to 3 years before you judge a draft class. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Just because someone and I say that with Quinn Ewers, where I'm like, I also said it with Carson Beck too. I think if Carson Beck had gone to the NFL, he probably would have gotten someone fired, but he's instead, following his girlfriend to the U. But that's my thing too. And even Jalen Milroe's the same thing. He has all the tools, but Jalen Milroe's like a tree where it's just, he'll do some wacky shit, and then there's some stuff where it's like, hey, you look good, and then there's some stuff where it's like, Jalen, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's so inconsistent.
Yeah, that's just with a lot of them where it's day 2 and day 3 is where you can take a project. Like I can see, those teams that are like picking later on, and even the whole thing too, where it was, oh, the Cowboys are going to go like Shedeur and Dak. It's like Dak stays numbered. I'm like, okay, Dak Prescott, I still say this, that if he was anywhere else, he would be probably a bona fide top 10 guy. It's just because he's in Dallas, he gets scrutinized so heavy for his mistakes because he really is a good QB. It's just the situation of where he went.
The expectations get so high, and then it doesn't have the best supporting cast there, either on the team or above him.
That's just it. And then I'll also say this too with the Patriots this year. The more I think about it, I don't want people to get their hopes up about T. Higgins, because I still feel like there are 2 teams out there that are lurking with cap needs that are not cap needs, but who have the cap that could go for him. One's the Chargers and one's the Cardinals. So I think if they don't get him, like I'm kind of doing already preparing myself for the not the worst, but just the whole like look, it may not work out. But then again, if it does, it does. I just think that look, the Chargers and the Cardinals both have money to spend, and especially a team like Arizona, look, you're not going to have Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Michael Wilson as your receiving duo in Arizona next year. So we'll
Mhm.
see where that goes. And then with the Chargers, if you pair him up with Vlad McConkey, who knows where it can go.
Yeah. I'm, what do you call it? The other guy I'm thinking about is Chris Godwin. If he's healthy and available, it
Mm-hmm.
would make a lot of fit for New England.
I
And
feel like
probably a better, yeah, again, if healthy, a better value contract than what T. Higgins is going to get. Because T. Higgins is going to get paid like a number one. I think he's a 1B. Godwin might get paid like a 2 when he can be a 1B. Um,
it's like saying, would you rather have T at like 33, like at 32, 33, 34? Or would you rather have Godwin at like 19 or 20?
yeah, it's Godwin 100% in that scenario.
Yeah, it is. And I like Chris Godwin too. I just hate him for fantasy football because that's like the one year I'll take Mike Evans and Chris Godwin flourishes. So the next year I was like, oh, I'll take Chris Godwin. And then Mike Evans goes off and Chris Godwin's like subpar production. I do think though, a guy like Chris Godwin, it's the same sort of thing. It's not the sexy move, but it's like, and fans are gonna be like, we don't want Chris Godwin. He's this and this. And it's like, well, if you look at him, he's got the track record and he's a proven talent in this league. Don't take that for granted. It's like last year, the other guy I would have loved to have taken a swing on, but I knew he wasn't going to leave. Was Pittman Jr. from the Colts? I've just always liked him
Yeah,
since he's come out of school. I thought
I
he's
would like
always,
him.
yeah, I would have liked him at like number two money as well. But like, if they were to give Chris Godwin say 4-year contract at like set 70 to 75, where like 55 is guaranteed, sign me up.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But, before we wrap up, obviously, we got Super Bowl this week. And well, yeah, it is this week. By the time most of you are listening to this, it's going to probably
Yeah.
be Monday. More than anything, before I ask you who you think is going to win, if you already have one, what do you think the biggest X factor will be for either side?
If the Eagles offense can win on early downs, that's what I'm looking for. They have to be able to move the chain and like stay ahead of schedule because with Jalen Hurts and his pocket presence that we have seen lately, and the way the Chiefs can bring blitzes at you, you do not want to be playing in third and medium, third and long against this Chiefs defense. Now, if you can keep the run game going all game long, then you're going to have a chance to wear the Chiefs down and put the nail in the coffin late. But I think that's the number one. The Eagles have to control this game on offense, and with the way the Chiefs play in situational football, you don't want to be in a close game with them. So what that means is that you have to be able to hit home runs in the running game, and not be turning the ball over. And to do both of those things, you really want to stay out of third and long.
Yeah, that's my big thing too with both of them. It's just because if you get them at third and long, it's kind of like leading a lamb to the slaughter, where it's just like
Yeah.
Spags will kill you and expose you, just like what he did to Josh Allen. I still think this is probably going to be the hardest defense the Chiefs have seen this playoff run. I know, look, Houston's got a good defense. Buffalo's once Christian Benford went out, it was over. We knew Kyler Elam. Like, look, when your first round cornerback is backing up, that's the thing. Buffalo too, like if I look at them for the offseason, you need to beef up the defense. Everyone's talking about they need a playmaker, they need a home run guy. No. They need defense. We know they can probably get it done with the offense they have now. Just just add in a weapon. You don't have to go big game hunting. Just draft someone in the first round. Go get Luther Burden if all you want Buffalo, even though God, no, I don't want that to happen. But with both teams, I look at Kansas City as just I still look at Travis Kelce to have a game because we know that, look, Oren Burks playing linebacker because we know secondary, Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay can take away your passing game. We know the running game. It's there,
Mhm.
but it's not really there. I think if the Chiefs truly, truly want to like not have a chance, but if the Chiefs are truly going to run away with this one, I think we need to see Travis Kelce do what he did in the divisional round. I think he needs to have at least not 80 to 90 yards for him to pop. But then last week, 2 catches for 19 yards. The week before, I think it was like 110 or 115 he had in the divisional round. So I still think he needs to get more involved. You can't just And also that's the other thing with the Chiefs, the Eagles too. They can't sell out to block him. The Bills did it, and they got bit in other ways. So you have to find ways to where you can neutralize the running game and make. And this is easier said than done. You got to make Patrick become Patrick because Patrick did not look like Patrick in the championship game, and I still think that's scarier than anything. The fact that they won the way they did, and he didn't need to put on the cape to make a significant. I bet he did not need to put on the cape to make a significant play during the game.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing about this Chiefs team. I think you look at the course of this season, like it was taking everything from the whole team to win games by the skin of their teeth through long stretches of the season. But now they've kind of gotten healthier. Like in the playoffs, they haven't really needed the Mahomes magic. Like it's been he just executes the simple stuff. And that is where you worry about this Eagles defense. The whole Vic Fangio thing is to basically put a cover on the defense and force offenses to play in the short and intermediate area with remarkable
Man coverage,
consistency.
zone coverage.
Yeah. And Mahomes has proven he can do that. So I think my other X factor here is going to be if the Eagles deviate on defense. Do they try something new? Like when I look at New England against the Rams in the 2018 season, they basically reinvented their entire defense in those 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl to specifically design something for that offense. I don't think the Eagles are going to do something similar, but I think if you want to beat Mahomes, you have to come out with something. Like you're going to have to win with your left hand in a game like this defensively because you're not even with the offensive guys that they have, it's not the best personnel, but they're going to beat you straight up because they'll just do it consistently. So you have to beat them with surprise somehow.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And also, if you have that like 10-point lead, you can't just sit on it and be like, hey, we're going to cruise because we know you snap your fingers and that's gone. Look, I think it's either side. I look at what will Mahomes do more than what will Hurts do because it's just at the end of the day, it's going to be inevitable. I'm still weighing it all if they're gonna what happens because we know if they win everything from the past year, no one's gonna remember. No one's gonna remember
Yeah.
you had to block a kick against Denver. They're not gonna
Those,
remember you went 0-6 against the spread against your own division. No one's gonna remember what happened on Black Friday. You're lifting the Lombardi. No one's gonna care. But if they lose, everything from their past is gonna come back into why.
well, and it's I I think as Patriots fans, we can kind of recognize this internally too. You think about the 2003 Patriots. Nobody talks about how the Patriots, had barely won a bunch of close games. It's their clutch team so that won close games. Like that's the way you tell the story. And meanwhile, you lose to the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and it's all the same issues you had defensively week one against the Chiefs come back in the final game of the season. It means you didn't fix anything, and the defense was always fraudulent. The way that last note and the way the story ends will shape the way everything else is viewed. But I do think this is a very good, well coached Chiefs team. I've been picking against them all year long. I'm gonna learn. I think they end up taking this.
I've said this. I said this for the AFC Championship game, and I'm still not sure who I'm going to make. I have my Super Bowl show later this week. That's where I'll make my official prediction. But the Chiefs win the moments, and we know that winning games is for the regular season. Winning moments is how you win in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and the only teams, there's two teams that have had one moments against them. That's 1 year with the Bengals, and then the Patriots in 2018. That's really just Tom Brady doing it. And one team that managed to beat them up. And that was that Bucks team when had they win that game, they won it on the line of scrimmage. They dominated the line of scrimmage in that one. That's what the Eagles they've poured resources into the line. That is what they're gonna have. That's gonna have to pay off in this game to win. Because Jalen Hurts is not Saquon Barkley might win you moments. Jalen Hurts is not gonna win you moments in a game like this against that defense. So you have to win by enough that you're not coming down to that stuff.
Because when you look at the Eagles NFC run, the Packers didn't have their best stuff that day. I don't think Jordan Love's a bad quarterback. I think it's just he picked a bad day to have a bad game. The Rams, well, they learned their lesson. You don't leave Jalen Carter wide open to get to the quarterback on third down. And the Commanders, I think it just all fell apart. It's they basically punch themselves in the face to where it's like, if you do that, that's just a one-way ticket to be sitting on your couch come Super Bowl Sunday. And that's what the Commanders did to themselves. So basically they capitalized on their other team's mistakes. I don't think Kansas City will make too many mistakes. The only thing I'm interested to see is, though, where does Jalen Carter match up? Because you have Mike Caliendo at left guard, who we know is a bit of, a little not the best. And then you have Jawan Taylor, who will just never get called for a holding, yet he's getting paid $20 million a year to false start like crazy and hold like crazy. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see what happens. But before we wrap up, Matt, since you are a first-time guest on the show, if people want to follow you, if they really want to get to know you better, where's the best place to do so?
I'm on Twitter. My handle's at Matt St. Dream. Also on Blue Sky, I'm at Matt St. Jean there. You can find me writing on Pat's Pulpit. I'll be doing all kinds of mock drafts throughout the off season, and we use like surveys and stuff over there, which is fun. That's stuff I touch. And then I will be on the Pat's Nation podcast with Pat Lane. You can find us on the CLNS YouTube channel or links to it on any of my social media pages.
All links will be in the bio too, guys. Pat's Nation podcast too, right here. Like I said, Pat's been a great friend of the show for a while. So sometimes, had to reach out, get the other friend on the show. But Super Bowl week is just starting, guys. Episode 344, YWC Football Talks in the bag. Matt, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. But folks, have a great night. For Matt St. Jean or St. Dream, depending on where you want to go, I'm Griff. Welcome to Super Bowl week, y'all.